Cheers.
David Lee, Squarespace, thanks for coming on.
Good to be here.
Welcome to Second Wind, a show by the team at Also Known As, where we talk to colleagues and friends that inspire us. Today we're joined by David Lee, Chief Creative Officer at Squarespace, the brand that turned just a website into a statement, a business and a reinvention engine. From award-winning campaigns to redefining how brands present themselves online, David has spent his career at the intersection of creativity, technology, and transformation. We're diving into the art of reinvention for both brands and for ourselves. David, thanks for joining us.
Did you write that? I might use some of that. I might use that in my personal bio. That's much better than anything I've written before. But thank you for that.
My first question is, what was your first job in the industry? I'm always interested in how people get started in this industry, get their foot in the door.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's also going very, very, very back in time. My first job, I graduated 2000. Got a job at a design studio in New York, but ultimately decided to take a sabbatical from my career before it started, and ended up moving to Hong Kong for a year. And basically, what do they call that? Like a gap year, right?
Yeah.
They call it. It's called what?
First retirement.
It's called a first retirement. So did that just to kind of see the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And I'm from Montreal. So decided after a year of kind of exploring the Hong Kong that I would go back, see my folks back in Montreal, and ended up joining this company called Diesel, which most people don't realize is actually just Sid Lee is actually just an anagram of the word diesel.
Okay.
Actually, so I actually was there in 2001 ish, and that's where I cut my teeth. So it was a great place. For those of you who, what's that?
Art director.
I was like a designer then,
Yeah,
right? Because I kind of was trained as like an actual designer. So it was a great place. I'm still in touch with some of the founders, JF and Phil and stuff like that. And it was a really good place where you could touch a lot of different things. Like they had advertising, they had branding and identity, they had architecture even, and they were actually one of the first agencies that really took digital seriously, even in 2000 and stuff like that. So in some ways they were kind of like a mini pentagram of like some sort, right? So I actually give them a lot of credit for being able to explore lots of different things and seeing where you want to navigate to the next chapter.
How do you bring disruptive creativity into that in-house environment?
It's a good question. I don't. I think it's different for every context, every brand. I think I got really lucky with Squarespace in the sense that if you actually even look at the genesis story of why Squarespace even exists, it was the founder, Anthony Castellana. The reason why he created Squarespace back a long time ago was he felt that he wanted to create this all-in-one platform to allow anyone to build a website, obviously, but he also wanted to create something that felt a little bit more considered in design, and he felt that the internet was like the wild, wild west. It was one of the most unconsidered places in the world. So the design part of it and the creativity part of it and the brand part of it actually was rooted in the genesis story, why it even exists today. So, that's probably one of the reasons why we put creativity, at the forefront, and also at the adults table, right? At the exec table as well, right? So like creative at Squarespace is not just like a department that's bundled under marketing or product and what have you. It's its own department. It's a first-class citizen. It's at the adults table. It reports to the founder because that's what makes it. It's kind of like rooted in this origin story. And I think ultimately that's the reason why we're able to do the type of work that we do, is that there's very few layers or friction between coming up with an idea and getting it made and seeing the results of it, right? There's no politics around it. So it's a little unorthodox, but I give it all the credit for why we're able to do some of the work that that we're able to do.
Did you see that when you were interviewing for the job, like that Anthony was like bought into the idea of brand, or was that something that sort of started to manifest itself as you like dug into creating that for the entity?
Yeah, it's to be honest, I think it was there from the start because when I joined Squarespace in what was it, 2012 or 2013? I think it was 2013. If you remember Squarespace at that time, it was primarily a website platform for creatives to build portfolios, right? And the reason why, you might ask, like, why would you focus on like, just portfolios, is that there was a belief that if you can actually please creative people who are the most fickle people in the world, everything else is going to be easy, right? If you can actually get the creative community to really kind of want to use this platform, it's going to be really easy to go into different verticals and what have you, because they're the hardest to please, right? So it was there right from the start. It's the reason why I took the risk of, I had a great job. I was like a worldwide ECD of a holding, like like TBWA, and everyone thought I was crazy to go to this tiny startup that no one really heard about before,
Just making websites.
just making websites. But yeah, it was kind of like I had the entrepreneurial itch, and I just got tired of working on brands that I could care less about, and wanted to find something that I could kind of like go deep into one thing and try and be an entrepreneur. And that ended up being the Squarespace bet. But to your point, I don't know if I would have taken that leap of faith if it was if I didn't feel that the founder and I were kind of aligned on what the creative vision was for the future. And as I said before, it was kind of baked into the DNA of Squarespace even before I got there. So I'm not going to take credit for being the person to do that. I give credit to the founder and CEO as well.
The entrepreneurial itch, does that come from like are your parents business owners? Like is that just something that through the years you decided you needed to scratch? Or story.
That's an interesting question. I think there's two ways I can answer that. I think growing up in Montreal and as a Canadian, I always had this ambition of wanting to do big things. And I for some odd reason, as soon as I had the opportunity to go south of the border, I took that opportunity, because it's culturally, it isn't the most entrepreneurial place out there, and there's very few places like
French.
What's that?
Anyone associated with the French culture is not entrepreneurial.
I mean, it's I love, I wouldn't change anything of my upbringing in Montreal, but it's more of like the joie de vivre. It's more about kind of there's people who uh, work to live, and there's people who like live to work, and I think you can probably guess which one Montreal kind of which side of the coin Montreal falls on. So I think there's that, just not even like entrepreneurialism, but just kind of more wanting to work on the biggest clients, or like wanting to work on the big, like taking big bets, right, and swinging for the fence. And I think after many years in the agency world, I kind of touched on this before. I don't know. You spend so much time at work, more than even like with your significant other and your families, to be completely fair. And then I think everyone in the agency world gets to a certain point where they're like, what are these clients that I'm working on? Or like, why am I working on this pharmaceutical client? Or, like it gets to a point where you're like, there's got to be something better than this. And it's a little cliche, but there was a little moment of where the penny dropped, where is, if I'm going to continue doing this as a career, I better try and find something that I actually give a shit about. And I can get up in the morning and go to work with my head held up high. And so I kind of reached that, maybe a little bit earlier than other people would in their agency careers. And that's been the over 12-year journey now, working on one thing that you give a shit about, chipping away every single day, highs and lows, ups and downs, and dragging this thing through the mud. And but you learn a lot from that, right? You learn the it's like running a business, right? It's very different when you're on the agency side, where you're a little bit like one step removed from the real conversations that are actually happening, and like the real business metrics, and it's so it's not for everyone, to be completely fair. But I just felt that, if I was going to stay in this industry, I wanted to kind of see what it was like on the other side of the coin.
I don't know if you saw Timothy Chalamet's acceptance speech at the SAG Awards, but he's a very big sports fan, and he kind of announced that he really wants to be one of the greats. I think he takes his career and he holds it to the lens of a great athlete, and he wants to compete at that level to a degree. And I know that you're a big sports fan. Do you look at it do you look at creativity as a competitive sport, or even just something that has constant friction between different entities that are pushing each other forward?
So I did watch that speech. I think it was quite polarizing from what I kind of gathered from a lot of the feedback on social and stuff like that, where there's like one camp where like this is what needs to be said, and then there's another camp where like, you know, maybe it's like a generational thing where it didn't come off like in the right way. I am definitely in the Timmy Chalamet camp in terms of I'm just naturally just like a competitive person in everything that I do. If you ask my wife, she'd probably say to a fault. But yeah, it's if you think about it, it's not even like being competitive in creativity. It's like just business is competitive.
Yeah.
Right? You're trying to use creativity as a vessel to solve like a business problem, right? And the yeah, it's hard out there. And if you don't have like a competitive like fire or a pilot light where you feel like your back's against the wall, that's where complacency happens. That's when the work starts to kind of look the same, and then all of a sudden it's a very slippery slope, and the work starts to look like shit. And yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because as someone who is competitive, who looks at work as a professional sports team, right?
Yeah.
And not as like a family, right? And you want to get along as a professional sports team, but you're trying to like perform here, right? You're trying to compete. You're trying to put the best team on the floor to win. Um, it's it's the reason why I came to the U.S. and I didn't stay in Canada. I didn't feel the competitive fire there, right? And maybe the capitalism is a little bit um, has taken over a little bit too much of the American culture, like to a
It's extreme.
Extreme.
It's an extreme where
But-
it's our extreme sport.
Yeah.
but you always you're always curious about what's on the other side of the fence, and that was part of it. I just didn't feel the competitive nature of being in Canada and being in Montreal. Like I wanted to play. It felt like going from like the minor leagues to the big leagues and stuff like that. So I've always kind of used that as fuel, right, to that competitive fire. I think it really comes down to always having a chip on your shoulder and feeling like your back's against a wall. I have a philosophy in life, and everything that I do is that if you drop me into a pool of people where I'm like the no one and like the smallest person out there, I guarantee you in a few months I won't be that person. And I think it's no matter how where you are in the narrative arc of your career, or just in life in general, I've just kept the same philosophy in everything we do, right? So that got me out of Montreal to San Francisco, then to London, and then and that's just geography, right? And I want to see the world. So how do you use work as a vessel to actually go out and see the world, right? And then it also, there's no reason why I was one of the youngest worldwide ECDs at TBWA, right? It's because again, there's a chip on your shoulder where you're trying to prove something, right? You're trying to constantly prove, and you're not resting on your laurels. It's the same thing at Squarespace when I decided, after the first year, essentially, or the first 2 years, where I'm like, you know what, we're a DIY company over here. It would make sense for us to DIY almost all of our marketing and creative work out here, right? It made like a lot of sense to me, and back in that time, there were not a lot of in-house agencies, but it was a challenge. It was a stretch goal. It's like, okay, well, I can do this, but like, how do I do it where the work is, like, you couldn't separate it from a lot of the great external work that's actually being done in agencies. I wanted it to like not even, I didn't even want to call it like an in-house agency. It was just kind of like, we just wanted to do great work and consistently come to bat and put out good work and put out good work. After this, I'm going to go to the Dominican Republic, and I'm going to be the one show jury president on the brand side kind of category. And the goal there is I want the work on the brand side to be better. I want it to be the best in show than all the other categories like out there. Like there's a goal, and maybe we'll hit it this year, maybe we won't, but there's still. I'm a person who needs to put flags in the ground.
You've championed the in-house
Yeah.
brand
Yeah.
side of creativity.
Yeah, and for me, like eventually, who cares whether it's done brand side or from an external agency, as long as like the work is great. But I still think today, even though there's a lot of movement kind of going the brand side, that the work still isn't representative of what I would call creative excellence just yet. We do our part, I hope, to try and like push that narrative into like a different place. But there's still some work to do there. But ultimately, you almost don't ever want to reach that North Star goal, because then you got to figure out a new one.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the cliche thing. It's not like the end point. It's like how you kind of like get there, and like the journey to how you get there is the fun part, to be 100%. So, and as soon as you get there, you pat yourself on the back. The next day, you plant the next flag in the ground.
So there's two elements to that I'm interested in, and the first one is like any particular like routines or processes that you attribute your success to, and then the second part of it is trying to understand how other brands can do a better job of empowering and protecting and supporting creative people to do great work. Because for the most part, as you say, you're looking to champion brand side and creativity. Not that it's slim pickings, but I struggle to find people who've pulled that off.
Yeah.
There's a few, but it's rare.
Yeah, I mean, I can name some good brands that do that. Spotify does that. Apple increasingly is like jump ball on every brief. Is it Mal? Is it internal? It's kind of like you don't even know actually who does the work there. Liquid Death does really provocative work. That's kind of all done in-house. So, I do think there are a lot of case studies that are like increasing and kind of you're seeing more of it. But I agree. I agree. Still, like present day, we're sitting here 2025 that we're not there yet. However, I will say the challenge is different on the brand side. The way that I've always approached it is try and affect it from the top down, not the bottoms up. I think the bottoms up kind of angle is it's a hard journey, right? So when I say you want to place creativity at the adults table, and what I mean by that is a lot of times creative gets put at the kids table.
Yeah.
Where you're like, it's loud, there's music blaring, you're throwing shit against the wall, it's fucking messy, and then every once in a while, like one of them will come up to the adults table while all the adults and kind of go, hey, what's going on over here? Maybe I can help. And we're always told, get back into your box, go back into your playground and make your sandcastles and shit like that. So I've always thought that is such an archaic org design model for any modern business, because it's my belief that creativity, critical thinking might actually be the only value add humans have at all. And we actually happen to be in an industry that values ideas and creativity and craft and all these different things. How can we actually use that same creativity for business as well, right? So when I say you're going to try and affect it from the top down, is that it's much easier to make an impact and to create change, right? So in the case of, for me, I scoped it out. I said, you know what? I'm going to find the origin story of why Squarespace was created. I met with the founder. I actually felt a belief that he actually believed. We had a shared vision of where this brand should go. And that made it very easy, right? I don't know if you can post-rationalize a creative culture, though. I think, in the case of Squarespace, it was, for all the things that I just mentioned before, it was baked into like the DNA of the company. I think it's harder I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's much harder if you're like a 10,000 person company
Sure.
and you're trying to post rationalize why creativity is actually important to you. I think that's a much harder path than finding a company which is what I tell everyone if they're actually thinking about going to the brand side, just do your research. What do they value?
Yeah.
Even that, look at the org design of the company. Like, what is the founder and CEO? What is the first concentric circle of people that actually reports to that individual? You're going to learn a lot, right? And if the creative team is buried 3 levels, 4 levels deep, it's probably a quick tell that that isn't actually valued in that organization.
What's your advice around trying to get CFOs to trust you with brands?
That is a great question. So you want to know what? I have a great relationship with our CFO. We go out to dinner, we shoot the shit, we joke. I would actually argue that's the first person you should make an alliance with. When you're in the organization. And I'm not just talking about socially, but like the person to understand what the value add of creativity actually brings to this company, this brand. And more importantly, sometimes really even explaining what creativity is, right? And placing a value and a numeric value to that is hard, right? Because so much of it is like subjective and like what have you. But I've always said that like finance is also a creative. Like there are creative jobs in every industry. And when I say creativity might be the only job left, which is what I've said before, I'm not just talking about creatives in advertising, right? We, for some odd reason, took that word and just turned it into an industry.
It's just these people.
It's just these people. But I think in the future, the only jobs in finance, they're all going to be creative jobs, right? Because all of the medial tasks will be much better done by AI and all the compute that's actually going to be out there. So the only jobs in every field are going to be creative jobs and critical thinking jobs, right? So we have a head start where we've actually just took that word,
train creatives,
and kind of like taken it as our own. But it's my belief in the future that that's the only thing that we're going to actually have a value, right? So
creativity is the only job left.
It is.
It's a great headline. What can you unpack that? What defines creativity in that context?
Yeah, I mean that's like a whole different podcast, but it's I've actually done a couple of I've actually done a couple of talks about this because it's my belief that, and if you look at the founder of NVIDIA to Meta to OpenAI, and there's all these quotes that people are worried about what jobs are going to be left for the next generation. The soundbite that's really, really the most provocative is that they believe that creativity actually is going to be what humans are going to have, and that's why it's going to be this like very optimistic future. Obviously, they're biased, right? Let's just put that out there. But in some ways, I actually think this is the next golden age for humanity. I don't know if people actually want to do a lot of the jobs that are getting automated away, right? And that's going to open it up to a whole vast array of like new jobs that people should be trained to do, like in school and what have you. You want to talk about education for a little bit because it's important to this. 25 years later, I'm kind of on the board of trustees as a co-chair now of my alma mater at the Rhode Island School of Design. And one of the things that I'm trying to figure out, we're going to celebrate our 150th anniversary soon, is like, what does the next 150 years actually look like? And it's my belief that a creative and art and design education might be the model of what higher education should look like, full stop. There are a lot, higher education is being disrupted right now. People are kind of like worried about like, well, what am I actually learning? Why am I sending this kid to school and he's going to be $500,000 in debt? And it is because, again, I believe creativity and critical thought, which is what you're trained to do in a creative school. You're taught to critique. You're taught to debate civilly and collaborate with others, get feedback, work on something, and then you're actually, and this is important, human craft, I genuinely, hand on heart, will be like the new luxury in the future. It'll be the most in-demand thing that people have, because my worry is that only people who have the means to do it will be able to afford human creativity and craft. because I mean the luxury brands have done a really great job of this, branding that this shirt was made in, you know, this small town in Italy and it was handcrafted by this person.
Ruggerman, my buddy's brand.
Big shout out right there. Brought to you by, but
by Stag Austin.
but think about this for a second, right?
Well,
I was at Art Basel giving a talk to a lot of the RISD alumni, and it was the same thing. Like you don't buy a piece of art. It's not even actually what the artifact is. You're buying the human story of what went into that. It's the same thing with a lot of luxury brands and like what have you. It is my belief that in the future, the AI stuff will be for the masses.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, only people who have the means are going to be able to afford like human craft and human creativity.
My wife was super bummed that our son didn't get into this bilingual immersive program.
Okay.
And, you know, we spend a lot of time with AI. And for me, I was like, it would be better for us to send him to Dallas, where Rolex has a new watchmaking school. Because I was like, by the time he's of working age, there's going to be simultaneous translation, and his generation is going to think nothing of speaking directly to people, whereas making like the value of a Rolex and watches of that it is in hand craftsmanship, and that will never change.
It's never going to change. We're at an interesting inflection point. I think no one thought the disruption would be so exponential. Like, and if you think about this, all the dystopian sci-fi movies always painted this future where it felt like the blue collar workers would be the first to get automated away. Isn't it crazy that in a span of a couple of years, it's actually the knowledge based workers?
That's crazy.
And the white collar workers who are actually the ones who are the quickest to get automated away. Turns out it's actually hard to automate a plumber.
Yeah.
Right. So this is why there's a big belief that in higher education, it's going to be at the highest level about creativity and critical thinking more than anything. And then trade schools are going to have a huge boom. Like actually learning to use your hands and making something is going to be the next boom in education as well. Right. And I think for those of us who have kids, I don't know if you have kids. Yeah, I know you do. And, you know, my daughter's 11 years old and just went, you know, in middle school. I think about these things. Like,
She's
what?
going to be embarrassed about this.
I know. I'm going to put her on blast.
Yeah.
Hi, Romy.
She's definitely listening.
Yeah, she's definitely listening to this.
Dozens and dozens of fans.
But it's what do we want our kids? If we're able to point them in a direction to a North Star, like what they should do, what will we be doing? People believe performing arts is going to be a huge place. No one wants to go to Broadway and see like robots kind of performing, what have you. They think sports, right, is going to be a thing. No one wants to see that. People want to see humans. It's like gladiators. It's like back in the day, right? Like people want to see actual humans kind of like competing and going after it. So there's, in some ways, there's, you know, both sides of the coin. But I actually do think if these large language models can code better than humans, in some ways, great.
Yeah.
Now it comes down to we've evened the playing field, so it's all about the idea.
Yeah.
So who has the better idea than the other, and who's able to execute it and kind of get it out there better, right? So the problem with that is that we all have more competitors now, right? So you've gone from like a select few people who are trained in certain things, and now you've opened up the aperture, and now you're basically competing with everyone.
What would you just ask creative leaders to like lean in towards to like try to push a larger agenda forward?
I want to see more creatively trained individuals like all of us here sitting at that exec table and that adults table. I believe for all the things that we've discussed, there is a competitive edge. We've got the edge now because we've been the currency of great ideas is something that we've always been after, right? And I think whether you're like a Fortune 500 company to like a startup, it would behoove anyone in 2025 not to have people who are creative thinkers who can come up with innovative ideas that affect business, not just advertising, not just design, not just like X, Y, and Z, but just be a little bit more, like how to be a little bit more strategic in terms of like how you use your creativity as a tool and as a way to inflict change, right? And I think it's about getting out of this narrow medium that you might be focused on and trying to open up that aperture and use that creative thinking and apply it to very, very different problems.
The future CMO is someone like David Lee and not a Harvard MBA. Do you think that the Chris Beresford Hill, David Lee's, Jerry Graffs of the world will ascend to sort of the marketing leadership role in the next decade, or do you still think that there is a mediation level that's needed between creative and maybe traditional brand building?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're starting to see that happen already. I mean, look at David Droga as an example, right? You're talking about like a legend in the creative field who's after the whole Accenture kind of like acquisition and what have you. It's like it seems like he's not only at the exec table, but is actually like a prime player, right, in there.
Yeah.
So if you look at my situation, I call myself a chief creative officer, but in some ways I'm the chief brand officer at the same time. We have a chief marketing officer, and she's like a partner in crime, but our roles are very, very different, and there's an overlap in the middle where all the good stuff happens, and there's a lot of debates in there, and there's a lot of critiques, and there's a lot of discussions. But I think you can't be good at everything, right? So I can't really opine on the length span of the traditional CMO kind of role right now. I do think a lot of the C-suite roles in general are going to change very quickly. Not just the CMO, the chief CBO, or the CCO kind of. I actually think a lot of titles are going to change based off of all the technological progress and just shifting in different paradigms and behaviors and things like that. So I think that's just like maybe a first step, but I think there's many more dominoes that are actually gonna fall. I would argue that a lot of creative people should actually be the CEO of the company versus just like the CCO or the CMO as well. And I think the next 5 years are going to be very telling in terms of like who actually comes out on the other end of that equation.
David Lee, thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's God.
Thank you so much for doing this. Yeah,
Appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.